Wait a minute. Before you even say we're live. Oh, we are live now.
We're live.
We're live.
Too late. We
This
are
is the
live.
pilot episode.
Look who, huh?
Good. This is the pilot episode. So, Scott, go ahead and introduce us.
By popular demand, please welcome Ken Walls, Glenn Morshower. It is the Ken and Glenn Show.
Oh, wow. Man, I may have just gotten chills on that one.
I wanted to do Let's Get Ready to Rumble, but that's trademarks.
Is that trademarked? Yeah.
Well, in a perfect world, 10, 15, 20 years from now, we will look back and we will remember this as the pilot moment of the Ken and Glenn Show with our announcer, the inimitable Scott McKain.
Our booth announcer.
Dude, you can't use words that I have to Google. and then
What word did I use, Scott?
No. You said inimitable, something like that.
Oh
I saw
my
the
gosh,
greatest
that
clip
is so
the other
funny.
day. I saw the greatest clip of it was Donald Trump pronouncing some word and it just wasn't coming out right. And he made several stabs at it, one right after the other. Oh, it was funny.
I like that. So the Ken and Glenn Show with the announcer.
Well, didn't they? Let's see. Johnny Carson had that. Who else?
Johnny's guy was Ed McMahon.
I wanted to be Hank Kingsley. Hey now.
Oh, that's a good Hank Kingsley voice.
Oh,
His name
Lord.
is Jeffrey Tambor.
I'm sorry?
Did you hear me? I said his name. There's yet another character actor. His name is Jeffrey Tambor.
You bet. Yes. Yes.
Scott's voice is like that of a god. It is. It
You
is.
guys. Oh.
Scott, you know what? I need to talk to you. You need to have and if I say her name, she'll perk up, but you need to have here, let me mute her. There. And Alexa,
Mine just went off.
I'm sorry, I didn't get that. So
I'm not sure what went wrong. Everything we're doing.
but you need
So
to
wrong.
have an Alexa news briefing every day where you come on for 2 minutes and it's just branding and it's not expensive. It's like you can get it's like $10 a month or something, and you could put out and I would Glenn, would you listen to that every morning of your life?
Not only would I listen to that, the answer is emphatically yes.
Yes.
I also had the thought of how many people would become religious if they could get Scott McKain doing the Bible as a book on tape. And I'm serious. I mean, give us an example. If you could just read any random passage from the Bible, I want to hear.
Wept.
Well, that's the shortest one, yes.
I thought I'd go there,
But I'm just thinking, if you could talk about, like, I would love, here's a word I would love to hear come out of your mouth is Pharisees.
The Pharisees.
And tell us something about what the Pharisees did. Just give us one random made-up line. You could even say they went to Kmart. It doesn't have to be accurate. But just tell us something about the Pharisees, and you'll see my point, Ken.
Then the Pharisees proceeded to Kmart for the blue light special to feed their troops.
Right. Who is not going to listen to that?
I know. It's true.
You guys, you're killing me.
That's it.
Scott McKain does the Bible.
We got oh man.
It's perfect.
I think we need to reverse the billing, though, right? Top billing is the Bible.
Right.
The Bible by
We were talking about billing.
You know what? I'm going to give you that's an accurate statement.
Hey, and I got to tell everybody,
Bible by Scott McKain.
look, I got to tell everybody, we've been on here for 37 minutes and we just started the live. So I got to sit here and listen to these two tell stories about their fun times and working with, I don't know, somebody named Arnold Schwarzenegger. Nobody's heard of him before. And, so Glenn said, Ken, you have to, like, when we start the live, you have to top our stories and tell your story of Arnold, and I don't have one, so I'm just screwed. I'm just gonna turn it back.
Oh, he disappeared.
I can't hang. Can I carry your bags the next time you guys fly somewhere?
Hey, you know what? I'll start us out with a good story, and it doesn't really have a punchline, but it's just a day in the life of. And it was when I first moved to Los Angeles, which was in 1977. I was 18 years old, and a friend of mine, that's where I learned. When I was 18, I learned about the power of relationship capital, because I got my very first agent courtesy of an existing relationship. So someone introduced me to someone and said, Glenn is moving out here in a couple of weeks. I was there doing a feeler visit, right? I just came out and put out some feelers, took a couple of general interviews, found a place to live. I did all of that preliminarily and then came back out. And so I got situated, and my welcome to LA was a party held by a woman named Paula Cedar, not a name that a lot of people know, but she was my very first agent, which made it significant for me in LA. And she had a boutique agency called the Paula Cedar Agency. And they were almost more of a manager. And she represented a dozen clients. And that's it. So she wasn't a rinky-dink operation. She was just more of a hands-on. She didn't even have a receptionist, but she was really good. And she had worked with Marty Baum for years, a big name in show business. And so she's having a get-together at her house just for all of her actors to get to know each other. And I show up at the house. It's my first official Hollywood party. And I walk in, and friggin' Grandpa Munster is there. And I realize I'm introduced to him, and he's a client. I'm thinking, man, I'm like the Jeffersons. I'm moving on up. I'm thinking, my God, I've been in Hollywood like a week, and I'm with the same agent that Al Lewis, that's his name, Al Lewis, is with. Well, I have to say, he was incredibly warm and engaging and kind, and knew that I had not moved out there with family. So he really sensed that, wow, you're alone. You don't really know anyone out here. And I was the exact same age within 2 weeks of his son, David.
Oh my gosh.
Wow. David Lewis. And so Al took me on as kind of a redheaded stepchild. He treated me as his own. And he was my mentor who gave me so much valuable information over the years. Well, cut to a year later, I'm back on a visit to Dallas. And I get a phone call from Al, who's letting me know, hey, if you want to have your family come out, I'm doing the Neil Simon play, Come Blow Your Horn, at this dinner theater place called Granny's Dinner Theater. It's not around anymore, but Granny's Dinner Theater in Dallas. And if your folks might want to see it. And I said, I'm in Dallas, and I'd like to see it. So you're here now? He said, yes. And I said, we're in rehearsals, but we're going to be starting in, I guess it was 2 weeks or whatever. And we're going to be ready to up and go. I said, so what are you doing Friday night? Now, what I know is that Al is Jewish. He's deceased now, but he's Jewish. And so he says, I was going to sit around at the hotel. He's from New York. He said, I was going to sit around at the hotel. He said, what if you come over for a Texas Sabbath? Which is something you will never forget as long as you live. When you start hearing Hebrew prayers, when you start hearing people go, Ma nishtana halayla hazeh mikol halelot. When you hear Bo Ruach Atah, when you hear that said with a Southern accent, that's something you're never going to be able to forget, my friend. And he just goes, how do I turn that invitation down? So friggin' Grandpa from the Munsters comes over to our house.
Oh my God.
And I swear, hand to God, my brothers, because I had 3 stepbrothers in addition to my full blood brother, Brian. I had 3 stepbrothers and my stepsister, Shelly. So we've got Shelly, Scott, Barry, and my full blood brother, Brian, at the table with Mom and Pop. And Pop starts praying in Hebrew, and Al joins him in Hebrew in our home that's not in Los Angeles. This is in Dallas.
Wow.
And we finish, And 10 minutes after prayers have ended, no one has touched their food. The food, mom has given everyone their dinner, and here's what everybody's doing. They're just sitting there because nobody can believe that Grandpa from the Munsters is having Sabbath dinner with us. And I just thought, you know what? If I'm going to be able to facilitate moments like this through relationships, and I really think that's when I set on course to putting good people together with good people. I never really thought of it as the inaugural outing of what that felt like, to take relationship capital that I have here and merge it with other relationship capital, and then just basically step out of the way, which is what Ken did with you and me, Scott.
Yeah, that's how we're connected. Yeah.
Right. And it's what Bob Donnell did with Ken and myself. Bob Donnell just threw us into the rabbit pen. He said, you guys are both rabbits. You'll find a way to make love, and I'm going to get out of the way. Isn't that a great story?
That's a great story.
Yeah. We still haven't found that, for the record. So I'm kidding. You're like a brother to me. So I think that it's important that everybody know that, you two are, we literally just spent 30 minutes trading stories while I was listening to you guys trading stories. But and it was amazing. And I kept, and then Glenn's like, why are we not doing this live? And I'm like, I need to hit that go live button. So, you guys have been around, and I want to, everybody wants to come on, and we've done it a lot, Glenn, where we talk about the current, situation, everything going on. And
we can avoid that entirely if you want tonight.
I'd like to let's just make it fun. People need to laugh.
Great.
People need to laugh. And I think, one of the most valuable lessons I've learned in the last 44 minutes is the lesson that you received in name dropping. And, name dropping is a thing, right? And so
it's considered a bit of a turnoff, and especially if someone does it excessively, and you're just going, oh God, here we go with this name dropping doofus. And that's also one of the first lessons that I learned, and it was shortly after I met Al Lewis, is the importance of never name dropping. It's just a bad idea. In fact, you know who taught me not to name drop? Robert De Niro.
But
I can't get enough of that line.
That's so good.
Hey, maybe we should also field some questions that people would have. Scott McKain is, how many books have you written now, Scott?
7.
7
wow.
books.
Just turned in the manuscript for number 8. It's going to be coming out this fall.
That's incredible, man.
Scott, what are your books about? Are they all different subjects, or are they all in the same genre?
They're all in a sense a business book. My first book is more of a personal development book, but my second book was All Business is Show Business, which was really the first thing I launched in terms of business, which compared what Hollywood does so well with what everyday Main Street business should be doing.
Did you decide to do it on your own, or were you prompted by someone that said, Scott, you're a walking gold mine. You got to get this stuff down in a book?
By the way, did you guys share this out?
That's why I wanted to make sure Scott understood that I was giving him my attention, but I was trying to get it shared. And then I thought, you know what? That would look like I'm not listening to Scott, and I care about what Scott's saying. So
I do too.
So if you'll give me 1 second, then yes, I will share it to the public.
I'm thinking, why do we only have 22 people in here when we have you two on here? I can remove myself and here.
No, don't do that.
Here we go.
I'm just playing. Violetta says, "What an incredible fire voice, Scott."
Oh, thank you, Violet. I appreciate that. Thank you, Glenn. I was invited to speak. I had been a national officer of FFA, Future Farmers of America.
Okay.
And now it's just FFA because it covers all of ag. But anyway, so I'd been a national officer of that organization in my early 20s. And, 15 years later, they asked me to come back as an alumnus and speak to the convention, which is really an amazing event. It's the largest gathering of youth with a purpose in the world.
So it's a national convention?
Yeah, 25,000 in the audience. And
oh my gosh,
just an incredible experience. So one of the other keynote speakers was Zig Ziglar, and I was looking so forward to the chance just to be in the audience. And I check in the hotel, and there's a message at the front desk, and it said, Scott, wondering what you're doing tonight for dinner. Please call Zig in room. Well, my wife's with me, and I said, I felt like a little league shortstop that Derek Jeter has just asked out, to get a Coke. I was overwhelmed. So my wife and Zig and I went to dinner that night, just the three of us. And as we're sitting there, he said, Scott, I was looking beforehand and I didn't see a book. And I said, well, Zig, there's a good reason for that. I've never written a book. And he laughed. He said, yeah, I haven't either. And all of a sudden my wife and I are looking at each other going, we have 8 on the shelf, but he said, you know what? Every morning I get up and I write 3 pages and I do it every day. And about 6 months later, they tell me I've got a book. And he just sat back and kind of smiled. And the next morning I got up and wrote the first 3 pages of my first book, because the thought of writing a book was so daunting and so overwhelming that starting it just seems, but I could write 3 pages. And it was the discipline of writing those 3 pages a day. And that's been it. The story of how I've written all of them is it's not that you write a book, it's that you outline and decide what your logical progression of thought is. And then you just start writing 3 pages a day until you get it out.
Well, you just described my religion, and my religion is a religion I've nicknamed incrementalism. And I'm not joking. I love it. I've always gone by, because if you think about it, that's how all great things are achieved, is just a little bit at a time. Yeah. Incrementally. You don't have to write the book. You just write today's thoughts. I think Zig gave you a gold mine there.
Absolutely.
And did you follow that same policy for every book you wrote?
Every book.
Yeah. Well, thank you, Zig Ziglar,
Yeah. As a side thing, when my wife passed away, I go to the mailbox like 10 days later, which is kind of the tough time when it first happens. All your friends are there and everybody's there, and and then a couple of weeks later, everybody's back to their lives, but yours will never be the same. And I go to the mailbox, and there was this little package, and it said Ziglar Corporation, and I thought, oh, how cool! Somebody has sent me one of Zig's books, and I opened it up, and there was a handwritten, like 8-page handwritten letter from Zig. Talking about that night at dinner, and he was ruminating on, they had lost a child, and how the differences between losing a child and losing the person that slept next to you for 25 years. And it was just the most, and we talked about this before, but I want to be that kind of person. After Zig passed, I did a little story about that on YouTube, and I heard from probably 50 people that he had done the same thing for. Wow. And then somebody said to me, well, does that make you feel less special because he had done it for so many people? And I said, no, it makes me feel more special about the man that Zig was, because I've got friends that have been friends of mine for life and maybe sent a sympathy card, and somebody who I know was busier and more influential took the time to do that. And I just think it speaks volumes of the kind of person that he was, and the kind of individual we could all aspire to be.
What a cherished thing you had. Wow.
He was amazing. Incredible.
And Scott, I have you gotten to know Tom and Julie and his kids?
We have corresponded. I have not met them in person, but after he passed and I did that video, Tom also wrote just this wonderful thing to me, thanking me for honoring his dad that way. And I was like, gosh, I was just honored to, and I don't mean to make it sound, I wasn't on Zig's speed dial,
Right.
He was just that kind of person that with his acquaintances and with, the people that he knew, that he would try to be that kind of person.
Well, and his children are exactly the same. I mean, they really, and I'm friends with all three of them. And Julie is she's just a really good friend. Her and I really became good friends. And so she was, she one day asked me for my address, and I gave it to her, and I said, "Why? You sending me $1 million?" And I was joking, and she laughed. She cackles when she laughs. I just love her. She's amazing. And I got and it's on one of my bookshelves, but I got a book from her, and I forget, it's a book on marketing, and I forget who the author was. I'll grab it maybe here in a minute and show you guys, but it's a book about marketing from the maybe 40s or 50s. These two brothers wrote this book, and it was one of Zig's favorite books. And the entire book has Zig's writing and underlines and in the margins of Zig writing all of his notes. And it is one of the most prized possessions that I have. I have, that's what he learned from, and he just mind blowing. That's how his children are too. They're just good people.
Man, I so regret that I never had a chance to meet Zig Ziglar.
Me too.
Was that a surname or was that his name from birth?
It is a nickname, surname.
His real name is
gosh, because one of his brothers was Horace and his nickname was Judge. So like all of the brothers in the family had nicknames that they went by.
Yeah, I'm looking it up. I forget now. I'm Googling it.
What a great question.
Wow, why is Google frozen on my computer?
Total drawing a blank.
Can you guys
hear
me?
It's almost too good to have been that way from birth.
It's Hillary Hinton.
Yeah, Hillary Hinton Ziglar.
Yep, Hillary with one L. Hillary Hinton Ziglar.
Yeah. That was his name?
Yeah, Hillary Hinton. H-I.
That's like Johnny Cash's line, "A boy named Sue."
Right?
I mean, a guy named Hillary.
Yeah.
I would imagine that Zig Ziglar, got his share of doo-doo on that one. Don't you imagine?
I wonder why he decided to go by Zig.
Yeah, no kidding.
Yeah.
So can I tell you another story?
Yeah.
I mean, we're sharing stories tonight, and stories that'll bring a smile. So back in 2007, we're shooting season 5 of 24, which was our best season. It was the season we won the Emmy Award, and any purist who is a fan of the show will tell you that without a doubt, season 5 was the money season. And we had many that were phenomenal, but that was the sort of the summit of the show. And one day I'm at work at the studio out in Chatsworth, a suburb of Los Angeles, where our studio was. And I'm getting ready to start doing a scene when this guy is waving madly at me as he rushes up to me. And the guy was Harvey Korman. And I'm looking up at him going, my thought was, this is peculiar. First of all, you're Harvey Korman. And secondly, why are you here? You're not, I know the guests on the show,
right?
And he's not on the show. Why are you here? And he goes, Aaron, hi, because that's the name of the character that I played on the show, is Aaron Pierce. And I actually corrected Harvey. And I said, it's actually Glenn Morshower, but I appreciate it. And he goes, no. You're Aaron Pierce. And he goes, and I need you to do me a favor. My entire family is here. My wife is here. My kids. My attorney is here. My agent, I think, was also here. He had a whole entourage. And he said, and they all worship the show. And you're one of our 2 favorite characters. And I don't want to break the illusion. So if you wouldn't mind playing along, at least for today, can you just be Aaron? And I said, sure. I mean, yeah, I'll play along. That's fine. And so I went over and met everyone in his entourage, and he said, hey, Glenn, he said, are you a fan of the Burnett Show? And I said, how can I not be? I'm a kid of the 60s. And so, yes, we grew up. I never missed the Carol Burnett Show.
Right.
I know all about the tug on the ear and everything. And Tim Conway, what a great thing. And he said, have you ever met him? And I said, I've not only met him, I did a series with Tim Conway right before I did 24. So I know Tim very well. And he goes, well, Tim and I are getting ready to make our final trip, our final tour, our last tour together of our 2-man stage show. And are you a married man? And I said, I am. He said, would you and your lovely wife like to be my guest? And I'm sitting there going, what is with this moment? How does this happen? Yeah. How does this happen? Like, if I ever would be blessed enough to meet Harvey Korman, I would, of course, come up as an adoring fan. And instead, we're experiencing what's almost a bit of a role reversal, and it's weirding me out. And he wants us to come and be at his show. Well, I of course said yes. And so a couple of months later, they were in Woodland Hills, California, playing to a theater of about 3,300 people. And at the intermission, they did a Q&A with the audience, just like the Burnett Show in the old days. Because between takes, they would open it up to, and I think Carol, if I remember correctly, Carol toward the end of the show would actually field a couple of questions live when they were on CBS. And so he said, now we're going to take some questions from the audience. Could we turn up the house lights? And they turn up the house lights a little bit, not a lot. And then all of a sudden this spotlight comes on and he goes, first off, before we even get into the questions, how many of you are fans of the series on Fox Television known as 24? And I looked over to my wife and I said, he is not going to do this. And not because I'm resistant to it or not because I'm embarrassed. I mean, just utter disbelief. Yeah. All of a sudden, I'm 9 years old and I'm in the middle of a dream. Like I'm a kid who can't believe that Harvey Korman is getting ready to introduce me. And he did. And he talked about what a pleasurable experience it had been to be on set and all of this. And if you would, Glenn, would you just stand up? And in front of 3,300 people, I got to stand up. This is not an ego moment. I want to be real clear about what I was feeling. This was not a, hey, look at me moment. This was you are a very, very blessed man, Glenn. This was the voice going off in my head. You are a fortunate man. Breathe this moment in because it will never leave you. It will always be here, and it will be there to counterbalance the not so easy chapters of life, which no doubt there will be, because life includes highs, lows, hills, and valleys. It's part of it. And this is one of the mountaintop moments. And fortunately, my life has been jammed full of mountaintop moments, and that gets tied in with, room for consciousness, which Ken and I have talked about at length, that there is an expectation for things to go well and a belief in pronoia, which is the opposite of paranoia. And it is the belief that the universe conspires for my well-being, that it conspires on my behalf, and not uniquely, but that I'm part of that conspiratorial effort on behalf of those who listen and pay attention to their internal mandates, and they follow their instructions within. Whether you want to make that religious or not, it's just true about humans. Yep. Those humans, it doesn't matter whether they are believers or not. All they have to do is just listen to the within. And I have been shown endless experiences that came about because I believed in two words. And those two words were probability and inevitability, in that order, with probability being the stair-step word, it's sort of the passageway, the doorkeeper, if you will, to the mindset of inevitability. And if you can conceive it, then it's doable. It's absolutely havable. So one of the reasons I think I've enjoyed gluing good people into good people. What does this say?
The universe is conspiring for me.
Yes.
I showed you that before. I have that written down and it's stuck to the bottom of my computer.
So in summation, that day when Al Lewis came over for the Sabbath evening meal, here's what I discovered, and I know that you'll both respond to this favorably. I've had so many moments like that. I honestly, I could not count. I'm long since unable to keep track. Harrison Ford calling my mother because I told him she had a massive crush on him, and we did Air Force One together, massive, unparalleled, and so now I'm working with her crush, and how can I not, right? How can I not? I got to have him call my mom, which he did very graciously. And these big stars they're very giving of their time if you approach them properly. And here's what I discovered after doing this several times. I discovered that it actually elevated their self-esteem. I'm talking about the people who are meeting the celebrity because now they could see themselves in a new light. They could see themselves as someone who not only would be able to meet them, but it was never just for a meeting. It was never just a hi bye, and getting someone's autograph, meaningless. Yeah. Now, it might mean something to the autograph seeker, but what I'm saying is, wouldn't you have preferred to have a conversation with Babe Ruth versus having an autograph? And if you got both, great. But it would be so cherished if you could have had, what if you had 15 minutes with Wayne Gretzky?
Sure.
And so what I've discovered happens, and you saw me do it this week, is by taking those actors that are in my workshop and gifting them with Malcolm Jamal Warner and giving them that time, they begin to see, hey, wait a minute, he doesn't bite. He's a flesh and blood human being. He's accessible. So is what you're telling me, Glenn, that I could play ball at this level, that I could do a scene with Malcolm Jamal Warner? And when we reconvened on Tuesday for class, I asked everybody, I posed a question to the group. I said, raise your hand if you were part of the meeting. And the vast majority of them were. They were there, just like you and Ken were. Yeah. And I said, so just tell me the truth. What would your comfort zone have been if you had been cast in a role opposite Malcolm Jamal Warner last week versus today?
Great question.
What would your level of comfort be?
Yeah.
And without fail, every one of them said that they would have been really intimidated, starstruck. And today they said, you know what? I'd have been fine.
Yeah.
And so what we have an opportunity to do is to bridge the gap and make available to people what had previously been deemed inaccessible. And I don't know of a greater gift in life than to bridge the gap for someone into the land of what had been labeled inaccessible. I think it is one of the highest gifts we can give back to God as we are of service in this world.
Amen.
Let's help somebody.
There was a brilliant aspect of the conversation that you brought up too, Glenn, during your class that I really appreciated was about the local actor.
Yes, you can go ahead and recap that.
I'm sorry?
I said, please go ahead and recap that.
Well, as an outside observer, I thought that was fascinating that you could smell the local actor when they got to the set. And I've had similar experiences when there are several speakers and you can always tell who the beginning speaker is. And it's, Glenn, you gave the perfect example, the football example that when you score a touchdown, act like you've been in the end zone before.
Right.
And I think so much of that comes from they haven't been able to get that bridge that you were talking about earlier, that bridge to understand, when you think of Malcolm Jamal Warner, you think of the peaks of their careers, the respective careers, but you don't think of the valleys, the ebb and flow that is a part of the human experience, and it's certainly part of their experience. It's just that we witness the highs, not the lows in most situations. Right. So, by the way, I've got to say, I've told you before, I was a fan of 24, and season 5 was the one. It was the one, and especially when you start with the assassination of one of the most beloved characters ever on
you can't say
no,
starting.
I just started.
Well, I didn't tell you who it was.
I know, but you got to be
Thanks
careful.
for stopping me. But I mean, when you have that holy moment at the start of the season, and it just there's a Dean Koontz book called Intensity. I don't know if you've ever read that or not, but Koontz Koontz was playing a game with himself. He said when he wrote the book, he said, "What if I wrote the last chapter first, and then see could I maintain that level of intensity for the entire book?" You know, everybody has this intense conclusion. He wanted to play a game with himself to see could the first chapter be as intense as the last, and could I do that? And I mean, it's one of those you're just.
Wow.
To me,
Brother,
that was season 5 for me.
Do you see me right now chomping at the bit? I am chomping at the bit because I think you have just hit upon a major nerve, a major something. What if, guys? What if that's the way you live your life?
Right.
What if you start with the ending first, and which I do, by the way?
Yeah.
What if that's the coaching? Why don't you start with the end in mind and live your life according to the desired legacy, right? So go to the end game and think about, and that's not a morose nor morbid thought, even slightly. That is just about issuing you a friggin' game plan, baby. That's about getting you on course so that you have a trajectory to the life you want to leave behind once you're done. And the reality is we will all be done someday. And we never know exactly when that day might be. And, and because of that, if we just go to what we want it to look like, then what that does is it issues us a template of behavior. Yeah. Because if you know where you're headed, now the template tells you, hey, dude, yeah, this behavior, it doesn't belong there.
Right.
It's not part of achieving this end game result. And so it can give you a great deal of assistance in making better choices for your life because you're choosing things that are, I reached for a cough drop and it made me say chewing things.
Yeah.
But you're choosing things that are congruent with the outcome you desire. So if you want a margarita, for example, if you're desired, and I'm going micro now, right? In the micro, if what you want to make in your kitchen is a margarita, you promptly put the milk away.
Right.
Put the milk away.
That's a great analogy.
It doesn't belong in the desired outcome. Right. And so it's great when you can start looking at your behaviors and go, okay, so what I want most in my life is this in terms of outcome. And you go, how is what I'm doing right now facilitating or even accelerating is a great word. How is it accelerating the intended outcome? And if it's not, man, people who are on point and they're really, really driven, they don't waste time. They don't spend large amounts of time doing things that, quote, I'll just say that don't help.
Yeah.
Like it doesn't help. And you start putting away your toys and it's just great. You know, I did an interview earlier today and this was the topic of our conversation.
I was going to say too, you know, he certainly created challenges for himself here, but Louis C.K. on a very minor, you know, you're talking about from a minor thing. He was asked how he became a successful comedian. And he said, I had this great bit and I would travel around and I would do the comedy clubs and I knew it was in my quiver. You know, I knew that I could have that and it was going to get the audience because I had it back
and there it is.
He said, I thought, what happens if I screw myself and open with that? It would require me to make the rest of my act as good as the best of my act.
Yeah, if you're going to open big, you got to have a follow-up.
There you go. And he said that decision to live and to force myself to be more creative because I was going to open with my best bit. I had to develop an act now that was going to be as good or better as my best bit. And it drove me to be more creative. And that's taking that macro principle that you're talking about, Glenn, and then thinking, how do I apply it like to make the margarita, to make the individual thing? And it works. It works.
Well, you're creating your own calls to action.
Yes.
Instead of looking for someone else to call your ass to action, you've got an internal mandate that's saying, here's what we're doing now, pal.
You bet.
That's great.
When we have, I have my buddy, and we all know that it's late in the UK, but my buddy David is on right now, and he has a very, very special request. First,
Is he joining us, or he's just got a question?
David, I don't know, man, if he's able to join us, we'll let him pop in. But he said, dude, it's the actual dude from 24 for real. Just Googled it. OMFG, what a legend. So then he says Jack Bauer is his biological father. And then look,
Glenn, homie, say code 57, agent down. Agent, is he wanting me to do it with a dialect?
He said he's got to do it in character as Aaron Pierce.
Well, let me read it so I at least know what I'm saying. And David, let's see. How do you pronounce? Is it Pereira?
No, Pereira.
Oh,
Pereira.
Okay, well, I just wanted to make sure. So let me get that down. I want to be a pro here and do it like Scott McKain would do it. All right, so
and
all right, here we go.
You ready for action?
Yeah. So here's the deal. You ready?
Yep.
So it would be into the wrist. Well, you got to show me the line.
Oh! I thought you had it. Okay.
I don't have it memorized, Ken. Okay, so here it is. Code 57, agent down, agent. It's say it again, Pereira, right?
Pereira.
Okay. Code 57, agent down, agent Pereira to the White House for backup. There you go.
Wow. That was awesome. Holy crap. And dude, you sound exactly like that guy on 24.
Well, yeah.
You said well.
Do you want to hear how I booked the job?
Yes.
Yeah.
So I have been coaching students at the art of depressurizing meetings, right? Meaning any kind of nervousness, any kind of, and I wasn't one to be nervous. But I started doing playful things about 25 years ago, and a little more. Now it's God. No, what am I saying? I was 25 when I started this. So it was 35 years ago. And I went in to read for my first series regular role, series regular. So it was a big deal. And I was hungry for the job because of the amount of money that it would be. I'd never made series regular money. It's a full-time position in a series on ABC. And it's me being humorous. And even though I've had a dramatic career, all of my buddies know me to be a funny guy. So I needed to be funny that day. And I headed out the front door. And my wife said, she saw me turn around to come back in the house. And she said, did you forget something? And I said, no, I just got one of my whispers. And she said, what did you hear? So she doesn't ever challenge that. She just, what did you hear? I said, well, I'm supposed to be funny today. And the whisper I just heard was that apparently I need to go to ABC with my shoes filled with syrup. And it wasn't a joke. I said, and so with syrup, yeah, as in pancake syrup. She said it was beautiful because she didn't say, Glenn, are you unwell? What she said was, sure, honey, did you want Aunt Jemima or a log cabin? Right. And headed back into the kitchen with me. We sat on my kitchen floor. I tell this at every one of my my talks, all the speaking gigs. This one, I have like 2 staple pieces and everything else is just fresh. But we went in, we filled my shoes, not so much that it would go up and over and ooze all over the floor and leave a trail, but enough to where it really just made me smile because my feet I'm a grown man, dude. I'm a grown man and my feet are swimming in waffle syrup. And so I went to the network and I wound up getting the job. And I thought, not only did I get the job, I've never been more relaxed in all my life. I had this doo-doo eating grin that they wondered what's going on with this guy. And it was contagious. And then I come back the couple of weeks later, I'm reading for my next job. And this time I put little baby marshmallows between my toes. Not the big ones, the little bitty ones between. And then I realized, dude, you were onto something because I booked that job as well. When I got to job number 4 and had booked 4 in a row. My agent said, if you book the 5th one, the next one we send you out on, you will achieve a new standing record. This will be it. We've never had an actor book more than 4. And this is, again, Scott, 4 in a row.
Yeah.
I'm directing this at you because Ken knows the story.
I do.
And I get to job number 5 because I booked 4 and tied the record, 30 years standing. I get to job number 5, and here was the prevailing thought. If it works this well in my shoes, where else might I want to begin placing things? And to job number 5, I wore into the room, I took a piece of Oscar Mayer bologna, folded it in half, because, you know, they're circular. They're circular, and I folded it in half, and it turns out that when you fold a piece of bologna in half, it doesn't fit well. It fits perfectly right between your butt cheeks. And I walked in and booked job number 5, job number 6, job number 7, 8, and 9, and then years later booked 24 with bologna up my ass.
And they're shutting down the internet because
God.
that's as good as it gets.
Oh my God.
And here's the reason. You know, the reason I started telling these, I mean, it's 100% true. It's not embellished. But the reason I tell these stories at corporate gatherings is, you know, for us, we refer to them as auditions. Yeah. But for the people in the corporate world, they see it differently. They see it as a business meeting, right? Or a job interview.
Yeah.
Right? We call it a job interview. So I asked for, you know, a show of hands. How many of you ever been out on a job interview? And of course, it's everyone in the audience, right? So again, this is not for actors. I'm now doing a corporate gathering.
Sure.
How many of you ever been on a job interview? And they all raise their hands. And I go, now, how many of you have ever been nervous on a job interview? In fact, let me take it a step further. How many of you have ever had the finest version of the job interview be the one that happens in the car on the way home after the actual interview?
Right.
Yeah.
And everybody can relate to it, right? And you go through that mental case of the shoulda, coulda, wouldas, right? The shoulda, coulda, wouldas. And you're wondering, God, why was I sweating profusely? Why were my hands shaking? Why was my voice quivering? Why couldn't I get my thoughts out? Why did I choose to wear that overbearing cologne or whatever it is? And you're going back to see how you could mentally rewind the game tape. And it turns out that doing this throws all of that out the window. Yeah. And the reason is because you don't care. So my mantra became Oscar Mayer equals higher. And then, you know what? I say this to my audiences, don't you judge me. Try it. And then if it doesn't work, you can judge me. I have had so many CEOs that have written me and said, dude, when you said that after everybody recovered, because we were laughing our butts off, we decided that you were certifiably insane. But you told us, don't judge it. And they say, do you know that I've been holding my monthly sales meetings with breakfast cereal in my undershorts? Do you know that I do this all the time? People write to me from all over the world telling me what their food product choices were.
Wow. This
is so good.
Hey, by the way, my brother and his wife, Doug and Julie, are watching. And
hello, Doug. Hello, Julie.
Julie is a huge fan of yours on The Resident. She's obsessed with The Resident.
Oh, tell her thank you. And hopefully Fox will pick us up here in a couple of weeks.
What is the role? What's your character name on The Resident?
I play Marshall Winthrop, who is the lead young man who's played by Matt Zuckery.
Yeah.
His character's name is Conrad Hawkins. I play his billionaire father.
That's right. Okay. I haven't seen it yet.
My wife's
there's a little nerve-easing advice, Scott. I know you're not one to get nervous on stage when you go speak with your corporate gigs, but promise me this. Promise me that even though you're not nervous and even though you're professional and you're calm and collected, drop some baloney on your backside.
Yeah.
and just tell me.
After all this is over and we're back out at meetings, Glenn, I'm going to report to you.
And your job
I'll
is
do
to
it.
check back
I'll do
in
it.
with me and let me know how that went.
I will. I will.
Oh my God. Scott's
My
gonna
crowd think I'm full of baloney anyway. At least they'll be partly right. So.
Nice. Do we have some questions, Ken?
Are there any questions? Oh my God, I can't even take it. So Ralph says we should be charging for this. It's cheaper than therapy. Oh, that is so funny. Holy crap.
Ralph was one of my students from my Dallas workshop. Thanks for listening.
Great.
Colin
is my friend. Yeah.
We're all wondering what breakfast food he's got in his crotch right now.
Well, I've yet to do something when I've been on the air with you. That will change.
Yeah.
That will change. But the strangest thing I've ever worn into a read was a donut. And you see if you can figure out where I placed it. See, I didn't even say anything. I just let your imagination wander.
Oh, I can't even. That's
the old joke.
Finger. So Susan.
That reminds me of it.
Go ahead, Scott.
The most popular guy at the nudist camp is the one that can carry 2 cups of coffee and 3 donuts. That's a whole other.
That's a good line.
Oh my God.
Very good line.
Unbelievable. All right, so here, let Susan has, sorry, I'm covering your face, Scott. She says, hi there. Do you guys have some advice for dealing with extreme situations on top of what's going on in the world? My mom is having open heart surgery tomorrow morning, triple bypass and valve replacement. I'm quite frankly a wreck, and I don't want to contribute any negative energy to the situation.
So I'm going to let you boys handle that one because Susan is a dear friend of mine and we speak privately, fairly often. So I'm sure she would like to hear your chime ins on that one. Friend of mine in Virginia Beach, Virginia.
Scott, do you know that you can click on live comments over on the right side and see the comments, right?
Oh, I did not know that. No.
Yeah, you can. Sorry, that might help. That way I'm not covering up your face and you could go read that. My mom is having open heart surgery tomorrow morning, triple bypass and valve replacement. I'm quite frankly a wreck, and I don't want to contribute any negative energy to the situation. I'll let you go first, man, if you want. Or
thanks.
Yeah, I can.
No, it's Susan. One of the challenges that's inherent with this is that you say that you don't want to contribute negative energy. And I've seen people that have tried so hard not to that they contribute no energy to the situation. And so I hope you frame it in that. And from reading this, I'm sure that you're trying to be positive in terms of a negative time. Look, your mom knows that this is tearing you up. And the thing that you can do best, I think, is to be transparent and to be supportive and to just express the love that you have. Look, the reason that you are a train wreck over this is because it matters so much. The only reason that we get so distraught and so upset in situations like this is simply because they matter so much. And so what your mom needs, and probably what you need, I'd suggest, is to just turn it to the other side of the coin, that you care and that you love her and that you are there for her. And when you focus on that, worry is nothing more or less than negative goal setting. It is focusing on outcomes we don't want. And so what I would suggest for you is to discipline yourself and just write down specifically what it is that you do want. You want her to come through the surgery. You want her to be healthy. You want, just make the list of all of the things that you do want. And then that's what you center on, and that's what you focus on. And that's what you're looking at as you're awaiting the results of what's going to happen. Look, it is natural how you're feeling right now. But what we have to do to be and I went through a wife with a terminal illness. What we have to do is to be the best that we can be for them, because as you know, it's not about us and how we feel about the situation. It's about what they're dealing with and what they're going through in this process. And so by focusing on what you do want to have as the outcome, I think it will help you balance yourself out and say and do the right things. But the most important thing is for you to be there and to show and tell that you care.
Wow. I am not sure I can top that, but what I would add to that is
brilliant, Scott. Brilliant.
Not add to it, piggyback on there is, you know, I know that a grateful, you can't experience gratitude and fear at the same time. It's just not possible. So when you write down the things, maybe about your mother, about your life, your house, your children, if you have children, or your spouse, or your whatever, like write down everything that you can find, every little minor detail of everything that you can find that you're grateful for, and then, you know, project that gratitude in the way that Scott was saying, like you project that gratitude into the situation and the outcome, because it all boils down to fear. And you know, you cannot be in a place of fear and gratitude at the same time. You just can't. So I would try to focus everything you have on what you're grateful for with your mother and the rest of your life as well. So, Glenn,
I so completely concur, and that's not a cop-out. It's really what I would have said. So now I'm trying to weave my way through what both of you said to see if I could find something that isn't that. Because the truth is, I would have stopped at what you guys had said.
Yeah.
So I'll add one more thought only. And the one more thought is something I think about every time I'm in a plane, which is I'm glad I'm back here and someone is flying the plane that knows what they're doing. Meaning, how grateful are you, Susan, that you're not responsible for your mom's surgery? The right person will be doing this. The right person will be anointed. The right person has been assigned to this case, and they know what they're doing. And our best shot in life, which I think is the best any of us ever have, I think the best thing we ever have is the best shot, because we don't have guarantees.
Right.
We just don't. And so what I want is, I don't want a guarantee. I want my best shot. Knowing that guarantees are not available, then what is the closest thing to a guarantee? And the answer is your best shot. She's in great hands. And I listen, Scott's note, I mean, I know you know this because you and I have been friends for many, many years. Scott's note is to the T. What I would have said is walk into the admission of who it is you are and how it is you're actually feeling. This does not need to be concealed. It doesn't need to be concealed because, honestly, if you were feeling any way other than that, it would be puzzling to me. It doesn't make it wrong. It would be peculiar.
Yeah.
Of course, there's vulnerability wrapped around your mom's life because everything is lying in a very delicate balance. And so it's normal to feel uneasy about that. So just like nerves. So this is akin to nerves. What I tell people is that with regard to nervousness, nerves have never derailed a performance. Resistance to nerves is what derails a performance.
Oh, gosh, yes. Yeah.
So don't let your feelings derail yourself because, first of all, they're not going to. It's resistance to that. So give up resisting would be my coaching to what's natural. And what you're feeling is perfectly natural. Don't resist it, my love. Just let it be and understand, you know what? I'm right in the lane here. I'm right in the lane of normalcy. I'm having predictable feelings. So bring it on, right? This all makes sense. And I'm hoping that helped. And I know you well enough to know that hearing from these other guys has been helpful to you. So I love you and blessings with your whole family and those surgeons' hands tomorrow morning.
Amen.
You bet.
Amen. Well, I'll send a prayer as well. So
Amen.
A lot of people praying for you on here too. That's awesome. That's awesome. Does anybody else have any other questions as well? Scott, I'm curious how soon you're going to buy a package of bologna.
I'm going to go on Instacart here pretty quick and see if I can get it delivered. just for practice.
And listen, find an old pair of shoes that you don't mind boogering up, and throw some syrup in there, and tell me that it doesn't change your perception of the moment.
Oh my Lord!
Glenn, you mentioned something about how you don't get nervous, and I before every time before I walk on stage, I get and nervous is not the right word for it, because I think
energized.
I get energized. I have performance anticipation.
Yeah.
Because it matters to me. I really want to do. So if I don't feel anything, I think that's a problem.
That's a problem.
Is that right? I mean, do you agree?
Yeah, if you came to me and said, right before I go on stage, I don't feel anything, I'd go, then we need to talk.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah. Same exact thing is that's just, I get jacked up. My heart rate's up. Everything's up because I'm invested in it, not because I'm afraid. So that's what we've got to make sure that we have a healthy understanding of what is and what isn't. So nerves are not our enemy. They are our fuel.
Yes.
So if your chronic opinionitis about nerves is that they are your enemy, then when nerves, which are normal, strike, then we go into the freak out zone.
Yeah.
Right. But if you see them as fuel and normal and wonderful, how about that one? They're wonderful. And you look down and you smile and you go, look at you invested in this. And this is a conversation between you and your own condition. You go, look at you. Look at your body caring about this. And then the nerves, here's the conversation that ensues. They look up and they go, so we're not weirding you out at all? And you go, no.
Yeah, we're not in control. Yeah.
But they go, no, specifically, they're going, so you're not weirded out about our appearance in your life right now? And you go, not at all. I understand that you're just part of the package. And they go, so then you're good. And you go, yeah, I'm good. And then all of a sudden, everything settles because we have befriended something that others are perceiving, or I should say misperceiving, as the enemy. And I think that that's one of the greatest secrets in life, is go about the business of having a healthier interpretation of moments than others have. Just really commit to having a healthy interpretation.
We have questions coming in, by the way. I don't know if you know that.
Well, we should. It's the first episode.
I know. Well, we have
and I don't want Scott to ever go away. He's a friggin' genius.
I know. I'm with you.
It's gonna be fried bologna.
we need to have Scott involved in this, man.
Oh, that's what a great question.
I mean, when Scott answered Susan the way he did,
I know.
I sat there looking and going, bless you, my brother.
Oh,
yeah.
I really did. I just looked and I went, that is, man, you can't get that kind of counseling with ease. That's a special man that talks that way.
You're very kind, Glenn. Thanks. It works both directions with you two guys as well. Thank you.
Thank you, buddy. But I mean, I know Susan personally, so I just know how you just softened her heart tonight. Both of you guys massaged her beingness, which is phenomenal.
Carrie Lynn, thank you for saying that, Glenn. Carrie Lynn Carter says, Glenn is such a wealth of knowledge. How does one get to that?
I'm assuming that you might want me to answer that.
Well,
Scott can answer, and then I'll answer how you get to Scott's level of knowledge.
Right.
I think you get to it by giving up your role as an extra in your own life. I think you've got to give up the role of being an extra. And I think you also have to decide to get rid of all of the negative speak and quit burying yourself or really bombarding yourself with negative terminology, like saying, for example, I'm weak. Why would you ever say that? Why would you affirm that? we've talked about it many times that weaklings don't outswim 500 million sperm.
Right.
That's not what a weakling does. You don't defeat 500 million competitors, and wind up in the world as a weakling. So I think that people who esteem themselves to be weak in any way, or low self-esteem, I think that they need a simple course in remembrance. So I think to answer your question, I think that there's a lot of remembering to be done, not learning, remembering. You just need to remember that you are a miracle. It's not a simple, feel-good statement that makes you, smile instead of frown. It's just the truth. You and everyone in this world is an unrepeatable miracle in time unfolding before us. And when you really understand that, there's no room to settle. And you realize, I don't think I outswam 500 million sperm to settle. I don't think I'm in this world to settle. I think I'm in this world to express, not impress. And I'm committed to expressing to the full extent of my capacity. And I think that that's a conversation you have with whatever you believe in. If it's a belief in God, then that's where you have that conversation. If it's a belief within yourself, that's where you have it. But at some point, we make a statement, and I can't encourage you enough to state it out loud, that as of this moment, I am giving up the role I've been playing as one who is not knowledgeable and one who is weak. And I'm going to do some remembering of the fact that I arrived here knowing a lot and then was inculcated with societal programming that was seemingly targeted to, what's the word I want to look, domesticate that right out of me. And if you look at children in a maternity ward, nobody ever looks at a child and goes, look at that loser. Nobody ever goes, what a jerk. Nobody points to a child and go, he'll never amount to anything. What we do is we go, look at the boob, look at the boob. He's okay, look at the dimples, look at the little curly hair. It's like, it's all positive and it's very upbeat. And then we somehow pull away from that and set on course to start forgetting who it is we are. I think that's all that's happened. When you see someone who's trapped in fear, trapped in just being a full-time resident in the town of Stucksville, it just means they've forgotten who it is they are and nothing more. So be still tonight and spend some time remembering that you're a miracle, and that not you alone, but that everyone is. Ken is a miracle. Scott's a miracle. All the people that are listening tonight are miracles. And I really mean that. You're a miracle. And I think that every great decision begins when you understand the magnitude of your life, that you're a miracle. Because once you grasp that, here's the deal. You'll treat yourself like one. It's very difficult to treat yourself like the miracle you are if you don't think of yourself as a miracle. But once you really see that and you look around and go, and you're a miracle, and you're a miracle, and you're a miracle, and this is a miracle.
Yeah.
And I'm part of the cast. Right? How cool is that? And then as part of the cast, you realize, which means I've got a responsibility to show up and do my part. And it's no different on a movie or a television show. We are part of the cast. And our job is not to tell the whole story. Our job is to make our contribution. And I think it's a direct parallel.
I got to say something, man, about you, Glenn. And you and I have had hours and hours and hours and hours of conversation offline, just on phone calls, on private Zoom meetings. First I want to say that I think that you have a leg up on the rest of society. And let me explain that. I don't mean financially. I mean, you drive a Buick.
Well, I keep the Buick. I drive the Infiniti, but I get it.
Okay.
Yeah, I drive the Buick when the Infiniti has a flat tire. That's what I do.
Right. So, but I mean, so you have a leg up from the sense, and if everybody would do this, if everybody could figure out how to do this, I think that I'm sitting here listening to you talk, and I'm like, man, I think I just found the secret to success in life, and Glenn has it. I'm not even sure that he knows what it is. So this is what I think it is. You have a leg up because you're a professional actor. You literally act for a living, and then you also teach others to act. You see yourself in life as a character in life.
Yes, I do.
You don't see the Glenn, and you talk about that a lot. Like, who I am today is not the same guy I was 5 years ago when I read that book. If I read it again today, I'm a totally new and different version of myself. I've evolved, right? So
right, we talked about that this week.
Right. So it's going to take on different meaning, whatever. You see yourself as a character in life. And it's much easier to maybe project or control the outcomes of that character. If you're out here and you're like, I'm controlling this character guy over here, and I'm back here, it's a whole lot less. You don't take the little trips and falls and bruised knees or scraped knees. You don't take it as personal. You're just like, oh, look, my character just fell.
It's just something that happened in the character's life.
Right. And I freaking love that. And it just occurred to me that may be a huge, I'm writing a book about this.
It is Ken.
The character guy or something.
To your point, it is a depersonalization of things.
Right. Like my brother's a professional golfer, and I think he's still watching. I don't know, but I've seen him like have a bad drive or a bad putt on the golf course and just get pissed off at himself, right? And and then it messes up the next two holes. And a lot of people do that in life, not just in golf, but in life.
Sure.
You don't do that. And you don't do it because you don't see yourself as the dude screwing up. You see the character screwing up.
Right. And until the day I die, there's always another take.
I freaking love that.
That's so good.
That is so amazing.
All three of us woke up this morning and we had another take.
I love it, man. And we talked about another thought that you show up with and I won't get into the personal stuff that we talked about, but we had a discussion about life and death and living and longevity and people that we know that haven't made it as long, and you I forget exactly how you worded it. This was us talking last night. You said something about I have a purpose, and my purpose isn't being in movies or being on a TV show. And, I have a purpose of delivering what I know, my knowledge, my gifts that I've discovered to all these other actors and actresses that I teach and I get to work with. And so my purpose is what keeps me moving and will keep me moving for a long, long time.
And my purpose is also who I am.
Yeah.
Because of that metaphysical teaching that has come up, the saying of I am not what I do, because if I am what I do, when I don't, I'm not. Right. And I say that again, we are not what we do. For if we are what we do, then when we don't, we're not. Which is why I don't identify myself by being an actor. Who are you? I'm an actor. No, I'm not. Acting is what I do.
Right.
Because I can prove that if acting is who I am instead of what I do, if acting is who I am, then right now I'm SOL because I'm unemployed, which means I'm not. It means I don't exist. If I'm an actor and acting ceases, then who am I? And now I don't know who I am because I've attached myself to something that is fleeting, or a great term Scott used earlier today was ephemeral, right? So when we attach our things to that which is immutable and unchanging, it's what are the constants? And if you really regard yourself as an unrepeatable, miraculous event, then that's something that never changes.
Right.
And no matter what's going on the outside, that will always remain your central truth. So you never have to worry about who you are coming and going all the time, because that's a constant. And yet aspects of us are always mutating. We know that. We go into cocoons. And I think even in relationships, I think more people would stay together if they understood the concept of winter. You know, when a tree loses its leaves, we don't go chop it down. We understand that it knows what it's doing and that it's in the middle of winter, and human spirits have the same thing. Right. And if you can look to someone and go, seem like maybe you're in a bit of a winter. Is that an accurate statement? It's not a judgment. I'm just asking, you're feeling some wintry conditions right now in your life? And someone goes, yeah. And the truth is springtime is right around the corner. But I'm in a winter right now, and that doesn't mean you need to run. And I certainly won't abandon you because you're in your winter. I will understand that springtime is that which follows winter, and it does it every year. And that's part of relationship maturity. And I think that same relationship is the relationship between you and yourself, that we have to give ourselves a break. And when we slip into a winter, be okay with that. And don't panic just because some leaves are falling off your tree. You know, we all have winter.
Wow. It's amazing.
And we cannot continue to live in that winter when spring arrives.
Yes.
Right.
And you got to quit talking about the winter during spring.
I mentioned him the last time, my buddy Charlie Plum, that was the prisoner of war in Vietnam. And he said one of the things that he discovered is there's being in prison and there's prison thinking. And that when he got back, it wasn't just that he had physical freedom. He had to free himself of the thinking, the confinement and thinking. And he says, I see people every day that are in a prison more severe than I was in North Vietnam, because they're imprisoned by the way that they think. They're imprisoned by their thoughts. They have that rigidity of thinking that's the same as my cell. And I've just found that message so incredibly powerful over the years, is that, we have to continue to think spring, think summer, and understand that there are seasons. I love that analogy, Glenn.
Yeah, it's just the truth, and we got to be patient with each other and not look for opportunities to feel awful. I find that that's one of the big parts of depression, is people are actively searching for things to feel rotten about.
And understand that a bad weather day doesn't mean that the season has changed.
Yeah.
Right. Because sometimes, it's like, one sale does not mean a trend in business.
Right.
Right. Sometimes we have a bad day and we think, oh, it's okay to have, a day that things don't work out for you.
Scott, did you see that question for you, brother?
Oh, that's so nice. Did you know as a youth, I got hired at a little local radio station. It was WMPI. So literally Wimpy radio. Seriously, that's on my 14th birthday. And it was
really?
My mom and dad owned a local grocery store, and it was because they thought if they hired the kid, then they had to buy more commercials. And so when my voice was changing for 5 hours every day after school, I had headphones on trying to drive my voice lower. And I trained it, but I didn't realize what I was doing. And I think it kind of created that. My dad had a great voice. He was a singer. I can't sing, but that's very kind of you to say.
I can't imagine that your voice ever changed. I can't even imagine that. Here is my picture. It's just my mind acting out. I'm picturing Scott McKain at birth. Are you ready? Here's Scott McKain at birth. So, hey, does milk come out of those things or what?
Oh, that's so cool. That is so cool.
There's my impression of Scott McKain on day one of his life.
Glenn, you're trying. They did a thing, a really nice thing for me back home in my hometown, and the doctor that delivered me, they asked him to say a few words, and he said, I've delivered most of the people in this room, and Scott was the only one that when I slapped him on the butt said, "Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. It's a privilege to be with you tonight."
Right. I'm picturing him slapping you, and you going.
The place exploded. It was the funniest thing. So that's. But what fed my aspirations, Karen, quickly to answer that, and we all have talked at one time or another. Glenn talked about it earlier this evening with Al Lewis. These inspirational things that happen in your life. And I remember at 4 years old sitting in a folding chair on the side of the stage while my dad was on stage singing and seeing him in the spotlight, but more importantly, seeing how people looked at him. And I thought that must be the best feeling in the world. And I still remember thinking that. And so that, I think that more than, an instrument or whatever drove me to think, what would it be like that you could do something that brought people pleasure and brought people joy for those moments. And then through learning from the other folks that we've talked about, the Zig Ziglars and the like, it just, Glenn, I loved what you said about, what you do isn't what you are, and what I want to be, what I am, is I hope I can bring messages that help people. Speaking or writing is the way that I do it. But even if I wasn't doing that, I would hope I could find a way to make a contribution. So,
right. Because we have things we do taken away from us, let's make sure that we're not at risk for having who we are taken away from us.
Exactly. Yeah. And I have to admit, part of what I was saying about a single day does not make a winter is that, I've caught myself a couple times here the last week or so, kind of having that little twinge of, being down a little bit because, there's obviously with no meetings, so there's no speaking, and that I love so much, I don't have the privilege of doing. And it's really caused me to think about, I've got to let that part go. I have to discipline my thinking into what are other ways. And that's why I love being on with you guys. I mean, you're great guys to hang with, and a great group of people's watching, and it gives us a chance to contribute in a way that's not the typical way. It's what I am. It's a different thing to do.
Right. So aren't there some Zoom meetings, for example, for corporations that would still have you on as a speaker, or any of us on as speakers?
They're very limited, Glenn. I have done a couple. The thing I miss is the interaction with the audience, that live feel. But I think part of what's happening is that it's such a time of change. Organizations haven't formulated the question yet.
Yeah.
But they're not ready for our answers because they haven't formulated their own questions. And when we don't know enough to make the question, when the student's ready, the teacher appears, and the student isn't ready yet for many of these organizations because we simply don't know. But there's some of that, and but the other thing that I think is so great about us talking and for the folks is that the other thing you miss is that intellectual stimulation that comes from the give and take that we have, and gosh, that's what's this is vitamins for my spirit, because it's that chance to share ideas and get inspired by ideas, and hopefully, whether it's asking the questions, the comments, or what we're doing to contribute to that.
Absolutely. I want to ask our audience, Ken, to be posting some questions, please, so that we can address. In the meantime, I want to ask you, Ken, if you will go to the screen share and put up a guy's picture, yet another that guy. I want to tell you a story of Peter Coyote, and if you can look up the name Peter Coyote.
Talk about a great voice. Oh.
Yeah, and a lot of people don't know Peter, but he certainly does a lot of VOs. And once you know Peter and you know his voice, then you spot these guys, right? You spot their voices when they are the voice of Ford or Cadillac or whatever. And Peter's voice gets used a lot, but he's a great on-camera actor. And there he is. So if you'll go to the one that's like the third one over from the left is probably a great, that one.
This one?
Yeah, that's a really good picture of Peter. And he's a widely known character actor. And so Peter and I did a movie many years ago. And the reason I ask you to cue up his photo is I want to give credit where credit is due, because Peter taught me one of the greatest, his take, and he basically was shown it by someone else. So I don't know who it was attributed to. I think it has somewhat of a Buddhist tone to it. But we were having breakfast in Bulgaria, in Sofia, Bulgaria. We were over doing this movie, and my grandmother had just passed away. And I told you this story, I think 2 weeks ago, but Peter said to me, he's just like you guys. He was a truly stimulating gentleman to spend time with. And he said, Glenn, before our lives, we were a part, not just you and me, but everyone. We were a part of this gigantic river that's flowing through the cosmos. And at the moment of our birth, it's as though that river went out over a waterfall and turned into spray with thousands and thousands of droplets, one after the other. Every time the next piece of the river goes over the waterfall, it turns into spray. Then it creates the illusion of each one of those being individualized. And that's our life. We were all once the river, but for the duration of our lives, we fall as if we're individuals. But when we hit below, we will be reunited, and we will remember that we were a part of the river all along. My response to that was, wow. And that was over breakfast. And I would challenge anybody to ever come up with a better description of life than we are in free fall.
Wow.
With our fellow droplets. We're in free fall. And here's the deal. Once you perceive this, it is humanly impossible. I'm using a big word here. Impossible to be at war. Because you can't be at war with that which you are. You can only be at war with something if you esteem it to be separate from you. When you realize we came from the same source, we're headed to the same source. We are in the midst of a free fall that looks as though we are separate. We are not. So my greeting of one person to another is always, hello, fellow droplet. Enjoy your fall. Hello, fellow droplet. And really just grasping their, I'm going to introduce a word here, grasping their riverness instead of merely seeing them as a droplet. See them as the river. And they are no more nor less than, they're no more or less river than you are, Ken, or what I am. We're all the river. And I'm telling you, that's a speech that needs to be given at the next United Nations meeting. Instead of a lot of political crap, and let's not focus on our differences. If they could just get the message heard that we are all part of the river, then maybe there's hope for humanity.
Yeah.
Because maybe there would be a shift in consciousness where we would begin behaving as the river which we are. And I thank Peter Coyote for that teaching.
Thank you, Pam, for saying that. I'm just listening, so I agree with Pam. This has been absolutely phenomenal tonight, guys. So Karen has a question for you, Glenn. Have you ever turned down or left a role because the vibe was not right on the set or from the person running the show?
The roles I've turned, I've never left a show. I've never done that. I have requested to be removed from a show. I didn't just leave it. I called my agent and I said, and it was a soap opera, and I won't tell you which one. And it was a long, long time ago. And I just didn't like the standards. I didn't like the standards. I thought the standards were too low. I thought that I felt like there was a lot of phoning it in. There was a lot of pretentiousness. There was a lot of posturing, and I was maybe you could say spoiled, because by the time I only did a week on the show, but I had worked with some of the greatest of greats, and one of the things that's true about life is once you've experienced an elevated bar, you really can't go back. I think that's true in life in general. Once you played with the big kids, you don't want to pretend that you don't know what you know.
Right.
So I just called him. I said, get me off the show as quickly as you can. And they did. But the other thing is I make my decisions on the front side. And I'm not going to tell you with whom, but I've only had a couple of confrontations. I've had 3 confrontations in 45 years on set.
Wow.
And they were all handled gracefully. They were not ugly. But one of them, I remember, we had a director on a show, a series that many of you will know. It's not 24. I was not a series regular. I was a guest star on a show. And the director was allowing 0 creativity from the actors. He had massive notes for every scene, which I've never seen. So I knew it was his issue because I've never seen a director who had massive notes about every scene. Wow. And it was endless. And finally I said to him, and the stars, by the way, were sick of it. They couldn't handle it anymore. And yet nobody was speaking up. So I nominated myself as the one to say something. And I did. I said, they were complaining. They were angry, but it was still going on. And I said, well, why don't one of you say something? They said, well, we can't do that. Why can't you do it? He's leaving. Right. He's going to be done after the week. This is you guys. You guys have been on. And at that time, they had been on for something like 7 years.
Wow.
So they really, really know their stuff. And I was courteous because I pulled him aside. I'm not one to embarrass someone. I'm not someone to usurp someone's power. So I pulled him over and I said, I got to be honest with you. I've been at this a long time. This wasn't that many years ago. This was probably 9 years ago. I said, I've never seen the approach that you're using. And I'll be honest with you, I don't like it. But I'm going to tell you something else. You and I appear to be about the same size. And if you do it any more, I'm going to go and take off my wardrobe and you can put it on and finish the job. That's what I told him. I said, there's a big difference. I said, understand that your job is to guide people. It's to guide and support. I said, you are impeding performance, not facilitating it. And it's a problem.
Yeah.
So he thanked me and I wasn't ugly. I didn't curse. I didn't do anything. I just said, you're really hurting this production. So maybe trust your actors' instincts a little more. See if you can see what story they're trying to also tell. And don't try to control the outcome at least as much. The rest of the week was fine. And 1 year later, the juiciest part I've ever had a shot at as a guest star. It's the best written role I'd ever seen. My agent calls me. I said, man, I got to book this gig. And I worked my butt off. I got so prepared. And I walked into the meeting and it's the same director.
Oh, I knew.
Here is how he greeted me. And I will never leak what show it was or who, because that's talking out of school and I just won't do that. So I can, this way, by doing it generically, a lesson can be taught, right?
Yeah.
Without it being gossipy.
Right.
He looks and he goes, I believe we've met before. With a big smile on his face. That's how the meeting opened. And all these other producers were in the room. And I said, that's true. How are you? And named his name. And he goes, you know, you helped me a lot that day. And things have been very different ever since. And I appreciate your respect. And I did the role, and I had really prepared. So I did my job. And I walked out and I predicted on the way in, I'm a little bit cocky. I am. And I'm okay with it. So I got on the phone. I call my agent on the way across the bridge at Warner Brothers. Let me pull out the charger. I call my agent and I go, so listen, I'm going to book this thing. And I'm predicting that I'm going to even predict this. I'm going to predict that they will call you within 1 hour. 1 hour from now, they are going to call you and offer me this job. And it'll be my favorite job I've ever booked on television. On the way across that same bridge after the meeting, I called again and I said, you remember what I said about 30 minutes ago? Yeah. Let's go ahead and cancel that. Let's just go ahead and just scratch that off. Forget what I said. And I told them who was in the room. And 10 minutes after we hung up, they called and offered me the job.
Oh, wow.
And he and I had a phenomenal week. So what does this teach? What it teaches us to do is, when you know what you're saying is true, when you know it to be, it's just the truth and it's right.
Yeah.
Don't be afraid to speak up.
Amen.
Don't be afraid to speak up. Don't be afraid to have some backbone, because if you're working with healthy people, they will remember it and actually respect you. They will not respect you if you say it in front of people and embarrass them.
Yeah.
That's ego. That's power. But when you pull someone aside and just say, hey, just so you know what you're doing, it's not helpful. And I wouldn't have expected him to pay attention to me if I'd been a rookie, but I'd been at it a long time. So I'm not going to describe the other two, but that was one of the 3 moments of friction on set. And I thought it was handled very well. And we are friends to this day. And we had a really, really good outing. And that, I was so proud of that performance and proud of the show. We just got to, was it Martin Luther King that said, you're really, I don't want to misquote him, but he talked about the fact that you're committing an injustice if you know something is wrong and you don't say something about it.
Yeah.
I know that's the theme of the quote, but I wish I had the quote memorized. So
Reminds me too of the incredible eulogy that Ted Kennedy gave at Bobby Kennedy's funeral.
What did he say?
Remember, my brother was a man who saw wrong and tried to right it. We saw pain and tried to heal it. Yeah, that's a great story, Glenn. Gee whiz.
Yeah, it is. Wow.
Well,
I have a question for Mr. Morshower.
How about one for Scott McKain?
Oh, I just love listed. That's awesome.
I just want to ask you, and this is a quick one. This, and then I'm gonna ask.
Oh, well, then the answer is 8 inches.
I was getting ready to say, what is the biggest amount of snowfall you've ever seen in one night?
That's correct, and the answer is 8 inches.
Right. So, but that my other question is, what is the very first TV show that you appeared on?
The Dukes. No, it was not the Dukes of Hazzard. That was the second one. The first one was a show called Policewoman with Angie Dickinson.
Oh, wow.
Oh my gosh, I remember that. I don't remember you appearing on it, but
are you trying to remember the other actor?
The guy that was a co-star.
It was Earl Holliman.
Earl Holliman. That was the one I couldn't come up with. Yeah. Oh my gosh. Angie Dickinson married to Burt Bacharach for many years.
Yes.
wow.
Wow.
And I remember when I went up and Angie gave me a hug and I walked away. And of course, I had my little Northeast Texas accent. It was like, I'm being paid for this. I'm being paid for this.
Wow.
Funny.
Awesome.
How cool.
So, Scott, I have a question for you. You have spoken on stages.
My first TV show was Cops. Maybe you remember.
Well, it's funny you would want to bring that up. I'm just kidding.
If I turn around and put my hands up against the car, you might recognize my guest appearance on Cops.
You've spoken on stages literally all over the world, right? Like many, many, many countries. And I told you before we started, we were talking, and I told you about my first little venture into speaking. When was your first, like, I'm a professional speaker, getting on a stage and speaking to these people to teach them something? When was that?
Oh, what a great question. As a professional, there were speeches I got paid for, but I can't say that I was a professional. Harvard says there's 3 things that make you a professional. One is that you get paid. But the second is there is a program of continual learning and improvement. I wasn't there yet. And third is that you adhere to the standards accepted standards of the industry. I didn't know there was an industry, so I didn't know that. But I remember giving a speech. I was 29 years old. I got paid $750 for Superior grain bins in St. Louis, Missouri.
Wow.
I love it.
That's awesome.
And the guy handed me the check, and he said, we should have paid you twice as much.
Wow.
And jokingly, it's not too late. You can say,
Yeah.
but I mean, it was in the early part of my career, so I was driving everywhere. So I remember driving back to Indianapolis from St. Louis thinking, that's what this is about. That I always wanted my clients, and I still want my clients to feel that I'm a value. That what they receive in return is greater than what they have invested in the fee. And that was the first night I really felt like I really contributed enough to the group in terms of what they learned and what they experienced, from the combination of humor and message that I felt like a pro. And I'll never forget that speech, but I'll never forget that drive home. Oh, thank you, Kim. Ear candy.
Your ear candy.
That's so nice. Thank you.
So I want to say to Glenn, like, Scott and I have actually been out and hung out together, and we've had dinner together. And can you feel the sincerity? Can you hear it? See and feel his energy? Because it's real.
But his line the other night is the absolute best I've ever heard on sincerity. That's what Glenn said.
Oh, when I said, in life, and especially in Hollywood,
yeah.
when they ask what is your secret? What's your secret to success? And you say, you know what? I guess at the end of the day, it all comes down to sincerity. And once you've learned to fake that, you've got it wired.
That's so great.
Is that the one you're talking about?
That's exactly the one. I love that.
So, Ken Walls, can you highlight Alan Skidmore?
Yeah.
Oh, look at you! Right as I said it,
You got
same,
it
baby.
earlier.
Same.
To all of you, do you think people are becoming more aware with this quarantine, or the opposite?
You go first, Scott. I've got thoughts. I want to hear yours.
Do I get to go?
Yes.
You're the host. Go first, Ken.
And I forgot. It was your show.
No, please.
Oh, right. Tonight it's our show. It's everybody. Yes, please go first.
I'm just a squirrel trying to get a nut. It's your world.
Well, go, baby. Get all the nuts you need.
No, I'm going to actually, for real, I've been sitting here looking for an opportunity to excuse myself for a couple of minutes. So I'm going to literally excuse myself. You guys start answering.
Until you answer this.
I got to pee too bad. I won't. It'll be too quick of an answer.
Okay. All right.
So I'm going to excuse myself, and I want you guys to start answering. I'll be able to hear it. So I'll be right back.
Can you read the question one more time before you leave?
Yes, and I'll put it up on the screen.
And this is from my dear friend Alan Skidmore from West Virginia.
To all of you, do you think people are becoming more aware / awake with this quarantine, or the opposite? Should I leave it on the screen?
Yeah, because we can still see Scott, so go ahead.
I wish I had a pithy, great, on-target answer, and instead of "it depends," but there are people that I communicate with that I think are becoming more aware because they've used this time for self-development and self-awareness, and to read and to communicate and to listen to the kind of things that what we're doing tonight. I know other people that, and it harkens back to the line, Glenn, that you had the other night from Covey about the tyranny of the urgent. They have gotten so immersed in social media and whoever is saying the worst thing about the awful outcome, or that they just can't understand. Nobody they know sick. Why don't we just get it back and get the economy going again?
Right.
And and so I think it's really individual. There have been people, Alan, in this process that have inspired me, and there have been people that have spouted such crazy, 5G is causing this kind of theories that it saddens me of some of the folks that what they sincerely believe and have been led astray. So I wish I had a nice answer for you other than it depends. I think the real result of this will be judged 5 years from now, when we've had a chance to really to look back on it and see what it's done for us and how it has changed us. I will say this real quick, and that is, and Glenn, you've heard me mention this before, is that one thing I do think is going to happen is that a decade from now, many mothers and fathers are going to have kids that look at them and say, gosh, do you remember when? And it was putting together a puzzle or something that parents didn't take time to do before.
Sure.
Now they are taking the time to do. And we don't realize the impact that that's going to have on so many kids and grandkids or whatever who will get time and focus that otherwise we've gotten so busy in our lives that we have neglected to do.
Yeah, very, very well stated.
Thanks,
Scott. That's beautiful. Alan, I would say, first of all the way through that, I found myself just nodding. Yes, 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 while Scott was talking. And Scott, don't ever not fully express or feel long-winded, because it certainly never stopped me. And on this show, for sure, I've been known to be extremely verbose, and that, that's part of being emotionally thorough.
Sure it is.
And just be our guest, be everyone's guest, to be as thorough as you feel you want or need to be. I think I really reacted favorably to your line. It depends what you open with, because I think it does depend. And I also think that the answer, in my view, is that it's parts of both. Meaning, I think that what happens is, certainly there are people who are becoming even more awake. I've seen that. I don't know if people are going to the opposite extreme, because I don't think there's anything such as, if you're unawakened, then you're unawakened. I don't think you're going to be less unawakened. Hopefully that makes sense. In other words, if you're unawakened, you're unawakened. So I don't think they're any worse off. I think it's a combination of, you've got a lot of people who are the same and a lot of people who are better. I don't know. I mean, clearly there are people that are physically worse off, but that's not what you were talking about. We know that. We know that with this virus, people are sicker, and then many have died. We know that. But in terms of what are we becoming psychologically, what are we becoming spiritually, I think that people who have a propensity to live a richly connected life, I'll call them the listeners of the world, because they're listening to the within. They're listening to the clicks. I call them the clicks, like a safecracker listens to the clicks, because that's how they figure out what is the combination here. And I've always thought that the best way to communicate with anybody is to learn their combination. Like, spend time getting to know where are your clicks, so that I can turn this way back and a little more, and then stop, and then this way back. It's exactly like unlocking a safe. And that if we do that, we're going to be doing that same thing within our already awakened state. That's the lens through which we look at life. If our tendency is to look at life through a pronoia, like a lens of pronoia, then we're going to be having an even more awakened experience during this time. But if that's not the lens through which, I think there are a lot of people who see this, and this does not make them wrong. I want to be real clear about this. It does not make them wrong. It's just a different take on it. And they're just as valid to have this position. But I think for a lot of people, it is a combination of two things. It's sad and it's damned inconvenient. And that's it. That's where it stops. It is very sad. None of us enjoy seeing these numbers on the tote board of deaths that are occurring, and not just statewide, right? And in our national tote board. I think there's something wrong if we don't see the global picture. If we can only become emotional about what's happening here in the United States, then I really don't think we're fully awakened yet, because that is the tendency to see these droplets as something other than the river. Mm-hmm. To go back to that previous quote, if we see this is the time in our history when we're being invited to see one another as the river, more so than any time we've ever had. In my 60 years, we've never had a time where we can look and go, I see you. Man, oh man, are we the same river? And the reason is because the same thing is happening to the entirety of the river. It's not happening to one droplet. It's happening to everyone. And so we get to decide that if we are to survive this, how are we going to spend the time during it? And one of the things I did is I immediately, when I realized that this is big, at that moment of realization, I had a conversation with the version of me that I'm committed to being on the backside if I survive it. And I say if, because we have no guarantees, but I know I'm committed to doing things that give me my best shot, which is why I've now been isolated as of tomorrow for 4 weeks. It'll be 4 weeks tomorrow. I've been shut down in my home. The only neighbors I've seen, I was no closer to than probably 30 feet at the closest. Because if they're advising me 6, I'll promise you I'm going to take 15.
Yeah.
Right. So if someone says it's a good idea to stay 6 feet away, why would I put myself on that margin? Why wouldn't I go ahead and just say, hey, what you're telling me is that within 6 feet, it becomes a danger zone. Then not only do I not want to be in the danger zone, I don't even want to be in the zip code of the danger zone. So, and why? And the reason is I have a commitment to lasting, because I've got a lot I want to do with my life. So there is some protection to show it, right? To show my life. I have regard for life itself, for the life of others, and for my own life. So if we are wide awake, I think then we'll be even more awake during this time. But if we're asleep, then we're just asleep. That's all there is to it. There are going to be folks that nap their way through this. And I'm speaking emotionally. And I'm sorry if that sounds like a judgment. It's not a judgment. It's an assessment of what I see. And I think it's very difficult to wake people up. I think that people are awake because they choose to be awake. And people are asleep because they choose to be asleep.
You know, that Jesus said in the Bible, not to get all religious, but he said, forgive them, Father, for they know not what they do. And you know, I've always looked at that like he meant like they're not awake. They're just not awake. Anthony DeMello wrote a book called Awareness many, many years ago, and he was a Jesuit priest. And throughout the book, he would make these really amazing points in the book, and then you'd flip and it would say, wake up, like literally wake up. And this is what he was referring to. You know, there are people that because of on 9/11, I read stories of a guy was, you know, running late, getting to work. His kids were in the daycare center in the World Trade Center building, and he was running late, getting to work, and he was pissed off at all the traffic and couldn't get there, and was just angry as hell, and was a few blocks away and looked up and saw, you know, the plane fly into the very first building, and realized in that moment that being late to work that day and not getting his kids to the daycare center on the 10th floor, wherever it was a gift. Mm-hmm. It was a gift. It was a blessing. And I think that one of the most important components to being a human on this planet is learning how to reframe a situation. It's what I was talking about with you earlier, Glenn, that you have the unique perspective, and maybe you're not the only one. Perhaps there are a lot of genius actors that that are on screen like you are, but you know, that can see themselves as you know, I'm just the guy out here controlling the character in the story, and you're able to reframe like, oh shit, look at that, my character just fell down and hit his head. Get up and don't do that again. And you're, you know, so it's a matter of reframing. Right now, we have the biggest opportunity that I've ever seen in 52 years. We have the biggest opportunity ever to reframe, readjust, redirect, go in a different direction. That job that you've been complaining about for the last 10 years, like, I hate this job. I hate this guy. I hate working at this place. I hate that. Now you don't have to. You don't have to complain about it anymore because it might not be there, right? It may not be there. There's a lot of companies that aren't making it through this, and you may be employed by one that doesn't. And guess what? That's okay. What's the old saying? Well, who said? I don't remember who said it, but I've lived through a lot of terrible things in my life. Some of them actually occurred. Right.
Well, Google it. Google it, and it'll come. I've heard the quote. I heard it years ago, and I heard you mention it on one of our lives last week, and I thought, wow, I haven't heard that one in years, and I did not Google it. Can one of you guys Google that and see what it is? And by the way, you just got an emphatic yes from Sherry Gideons.
Here's my favorite new meme.
Mark Twain. It's Mark Twain said that.
Nice.
Whoever said one person can't change the world never ate an undercooked bat.
Oh, jeez.
But
my God.
It's a funny way of saying it, but to Glenn's point, I mean, I talk with friends of mine back in rural Indiana, and for the first time in many ways, they see how interconnected we are, that something could begin in China and can touch people in a farm in Indiana.
Yeah.
Because we are truly all interconnected. It's a challenging way to learn the lesson, but it is a lesson that we all need to take to heart.
Yeah.
You know, I wrote down, Ken, while you were talking, I wrote down, you have to be awake to know that you were asleep.
Right.
Yeah, that's really good.
It's true.
You know, it's very difficult to comment on your state of mind as a sleeper while sleeping.
Yeah.
So that's one of the reasons. You know, my mom's 82, and we went out for a walk today. And even my own mom, this is painful, but I don't feel awful about it because it's what love would do, and it's what love did do. My own mom and I air hugged the one and only time in our lives.
Wow.
And it's because our exposures has differed. And honestly, I was kind of surprised, but her exposure has been more, it's been more than mine. And, you know, because she's older and compromised, she's trying to be better about keeping her distance, but she, like I am, is also a teacher. She is a college professor. She teaches government and still active. But you know what? It's part of what my family has done because my grandmother was employed at 89. My grandmother worked on a fishing boat at 89, and she fell on the dock and broke her hip at 89, and that's how her work ended. But God bless her. She was working right up until the end of her life. But Mom called me this morning, and my mother's got she got a beautiful accent like this, and she says, honey, she goes, I was in my meditation. My mother meditates in the morning too, Ken, and you'll meet my mom someday. When you come to Dallas, I'll take you over there when everything normalizes, and we'll go have some dinner.
Love that. And
she's a great cook, and she'll fix you some good chicken and dumplings like a good Texan.
I'm in. Let's do it next week.
Mom says, well, it'll be next week, but
I know.
Mom says, I woke up with this feeling that I wanted to do some C words and have some alliteration. So I'm going to be talking to my students this week, and I want to talk to them about some words that are coming to mind. And she said, honey, I wrote down the word compassionate, and I wrote down the word caring. And I know that they're pretty similar. And I'm wondering if you have some more C words. And there's not a punchline coming here. I know sometimes I set you guys up, but this is it's not a joke. And I said to her, my 2 C words, she was saying what her hope, this is to Alan's point, Alan Skidmore, his question about more awake or the opposite. She said, I have this prayer in my heart that I want to see us come out more compassionate and more caring. And I agreed. So my yes and was, she said, give me 2 more, because I want to teach on 4 words. And what I gave her was conscious and connected. And so between my mom and I, we've created this list of compassionate, caring, conscious, and connected. Now, obviously, there are many more C words that would fit there. But, if we just emerged with those 4 as something that has changed for the better, we would be an altered species, because I think, like Marcus Gillette said the other night, he feels like we've all been sent to our rooms to think about what we've done.
Yeah.
And I thought that was a powerful statement. So I have a vision for when we're back that we would be more compassionate, more caring, more conscious, and more connected.
Weldon experienced the same exact thing.
Oh, wow. No, it didn't feel right. But you know what? The price is too great, in my view, Weldon. I don't want to be responsible. I don't feel like I'm carrying anything right now. I've been healthy my whole life. But just on the if there was something that I had picked up while teaching, I don't want to be the carrier of something that infects my mother. And I don't assume that I am. I don't assume that. There's no part of me that believes that that would have happened today. But until this period subsides, I'm going to subscribe and trust the old adage, better safe than sorry.
Yeah.
I'm not a safety seeker in life, but I think that there are times that seeking safety is what's advised. There are times. And I love my mother too much to expose her to anything. And what we were doing was the reason she came over. She was out and about today, but I asked her, ultimately, look, she's my mom. She's going to do what she's going to do. And by 82, you've earned the right to do what you're going to do. And I said, but we have our groceries delivered during this period. So we're ordering from my mom, and we were going to bring them over, and I was going to carry them all to her front door. And she's very agile. She's not lost her autonomy at all. But she goes, no, I want to come by and I want to take a walk with you guys. And I don't want to get Zelda involved. That's her dog. So she said, why don't we walk? You and Carolyn walk the neighborhood all the time. What if I come join you for a walk? I said, that's fabulous. So we did our walk today. It was the second round of walks. We did one early this morning. And when we left, we put all the groceries in the car for her, and she left. But this is you guys are talking to me on the one day, just like Weldon, of my life that I saw my mom and didn't hug her. I've never experienced that, and it's very painful. But it's what love would do.
Right.
I love you enough to not hug you right now. That's the translation. I love you enough to not hug you right now. And Carol and I hug because we've been through this together, and we're side by side all the time. And last time I checked, we were both fine. So, anyway, thoughts about that. It's been
I hate to slip out, but it's a little bit after 8:00 here, and my darling bride that you guys met the other night prepared some dinner, and it is downstairs, and I want to make sure that I get my hug. I have to tell you though, real quick, I have not seen my mom is back in Indiana, and she said, my mom very seldom tells jokes. She doesn't. It's just not. But she said, honey, I wish this thing would have started in Las Vegas. And I said, I live in. She said, well, what happens in Vegas stays in Vegas.
Oh, brilliant.
Okay. You're doing all right.
You gave me a keeper for the week. And by the way, gentlemen, as I was leaving today, I snuck in an arm squeeze.
There you go.
Because I had already passed her window, which was open, and I was stepping way back. I was probably 8 feet from her car window. And as I had passed by the car, the window was still open. I'm already to where the back seat would be.
Yeah.
I reached my arm in and squeezed her upper arm. And I looked back at her, and she shot me the most beautiful smile.
Oh, that's so good.
It's like, I may not be hugging you, but I'm hugging you.
That's awesome.
I think it's a good time to wrap it up, Ken. I love you guys.
Yeah.
Love you guys too. My buddy Colin has had some really good comments tonight too. I just wanted to mention that he has been here, and he's one of the great guys. He's back in Indiana, so
he's next door neighbors with me.
He's talking about your comment, dear Glenn. So
which comment about squeezing my mom?
That's great.
Yeah. Ken, if you would, when you close out tonight, these comments will still be here after you've gotten rid of the live feed, and I can read many of them. Yes. Okay, good.
Absolutely.
Well, thanks for being part of the inaugural outing.
Yes.
Scotto, much appreciated. And
man, I'm always thrilled.
Can I talk to you about being a part of the workshop as a guest, either this coming or maybe if next week is better for you, one of those 4 slots?
Anytime I am open, Glenn, and I really look forward to being a part of it. Thank you for asking.
What time is your morning show? It's on at 10?
No, noon. I do 12 to 12:30, 2 to 2:30 your time.
Oh, okay. Okay. So then being our guest would work. What time are you up in the morning? Would it work better for you in the daytime or nighttime?
I'm fine either way. You tell me when it's most convenient.
Class starts at 4:30 p.m. your time. Our day class starts at 9:30 your time.
Yeah, I'm good either way. So
okay, I'll be in
whatever the class is that you think is the best for me to be a part of, or whatever the session is, I'm yours.
Groovy, and you've got me
for
next Thursday, right? A week from today.
You betcha.
Because Ken
and
I are meeting that day as well.
Oh, that's right. Yeah.
Yeah. So I'll do Ken's show first, and then I'll do your show.
And Scott, good luck having a 30-minute show with Glenn.
It'll never happen.
We may set a new record. I got a feeling we're going to be breaking the record.
All right. I'm gonna sign off.
Good night, everybody. Thank you so much.
Thank you to everybody who's watching.
Everyone. Thanks for being here tonight.
Yeah. Thank you, guys. Thanks, Scott. Thank you for that beautiful introduction too.
I'll get one on an MP3 and send it to you. We'll make it happen. Thanks, guys.
See you guys later. I'm not leaving but yeah, don't hang up, guys.